Welcome to another edition of the ArtCast. I'm your host, Art Shimko, coming to you from beautiful Austin, Texas. It's April 17th, 2020. 3 days away from 4/20/20. It's going to be a real interesting one this year. It's going to be an isolated one for sure. Quarantined 4/20. But hope you're prepared for those who partake in that holiday, that festivity. So, yes, this is the second episode of ArtCast. Or a couple of my friends sent suggestions for the title of the podcast, James and Faith. This wonderful, amazing, cool-ass couple whom I'm friends with. They're also from Austin. They travel all over the place. I think right now they're residing in St. Croix, doing a little island farming, which is really awesome. James, he sent me this one. It said, rude and tattooed stories from the Filipino fanboy. That's quite a title. Could be an episode title probably, but that was a really good one. And then Faith, what was the one she had? She gave me a bunch of ones. The Shimko Show, Art Shimko rules the world, Shimko the Giant, and what else? Art of Appeal, and Arthur the Conqueror. I love you too. Thank you both for those amazing suggestions for the podcast name. I'm not sure what I'm going to name it yet. I still think ArtCast is pretty generic in a way, but it's just what I just named my account on Podbean. And I guess this is still the working title for this, but if anyone else has any suggestions, leave me a comment here in the Facebook post. I'm having this link is going to be posted on my Facebook. And so just comment there if you have any ideas for a title for this podcast. You think I should have it together by now and have a title that I'd be into. But I was going to space it out a few more days for a second episode. But this particular subject came up, and I wanted to talk about it because it's kind of timely, and it's a couple days have already passed by since, or a day or two has passed by with this particular news or whatever you want to call it. It is news in that particular industry anyway, but I wanted to talk about some things going on in wrestling, particularly WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. If you're a fan of wrestling, you'd be interested in this episode. If not, you may want to pass on it, but you just may still want to listen to it if you want to hear me talk about my fandom for wrestling real quick and then what's going on that I wanted to talk about. But I've been a wrestling fan for a long time. Pro wrestling, the TV wrestling, as I have to explain to some people sometimes. It's I've been watching it since I was a young child. I'd say probably since the late 70s is probably when I got a grasp of it through my dad and through one of his good friends who's a huge wrestling fan and got me into it. He had all the magazines. His name was Mike. He's my dad's friend from high school. Longtime friend, and Mike had all the wrestling magazines, and he'd watched all the shows, or if he'd come to my parents' apartment on the weekends, he'd put it on TV. And seeing that I'm from the Northeast United States, I grew up with in the WWF territory, or at the time the WWWF, because it was the Worldwide Wrestling Federation up until I think 1979. So I grew up watching that, and when we got cable, then I started watching the National Wrestling Alliance with Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and Arn Anderson and all those guys, and yeah, I just loved it. I was really into it. When I was really young, I thought it was real. My dad smartened me up at a young age, but I still loved it because it was visually, it just looked cool. I just remember thinking, like, this is like a combination of a sport and whatever. It's like kind of overboard. It was like it was just weird in a cool way. I was already watching baseball when I was at age 2, so, and other sports. And I just remember being like, this is cool. They do stuff you can't do in other sports. I just thought it was, hilarious, but it was so cool. And then I got older, and then, I got too cool for it, just, I phased out until I was like going through like my music phase and my metal phase, and wrestling just was not in that interest equation anymore for that time being, for like high school, art school, post art school. And I don't know, actually, but I do remember when I was in art school in like the early 90s, I remember one night I was like flipping around on a TV, and I do remember seeing ECW, because it was based in Philadelphia, so one of the local channels had a television show for it. So I remember watching that one night and just seeing like all the plunder and all the, I think there was like an ironing board and someone hit somebody with, whatever, some type of object like they did over in that promotion. And I remember I had classmates that were like, yeah, did you see that? Have you seen that ECW? They're hitting each other with frying pans. So I was kind of like getting into that, but that was like a novelty, and I wasn't really getting into it. I just knew of it a bit, or knew of its existence vaguely. So I still wasn't really into wrestling, and then when I moved to Philadelphia in the early 2000s, and ECW had already folded, but that building, Viking Hall, the bingo hall in South Philly, where ECW and ran their shows when they went out of business, and then maybe even prior to, but there were like other promotions, like small promotions running in that building. And by the time I got down to living in South Philadelphia, I started going to these shows because I started watching, because on the same channel that had ECW's TV show, the local channel, all these other local independent wrestling promotions bought out time and aired shows like half hour, or no, it was like 1 hour shows, and I was like, oh my, there's this like new generation of like wrestling down there. So I started going. I was on these promotions, CZW, Combat Zone Wrestling. They're very notorious for their violent matches, death matches, hardcore matches, with glass and light tubes smashing into each other's heads and fire, burning rings and tables and stuff and all that kind of fun shit. And then there was a more like sport-based promotion called Ring of Honor that was starting up. I started seeing when they were running in South Philly a lot. So I heavily got back into wrestling, by then, back in the 2000s, as I was getting older, and you get your balls busted for liking that stuff, which is funny because the shit that people watch and are amused by these days, it's just like everybody just is like, you're gonna bust my balls about pro wrestling and you're watching like Tiger King or some bullshit. So it's like, so it's funny, but wrestling's got hip again in ways, and coming down here to Austin, I knew there was going to be a really good independent wrestling scene. Texas, it's, has a lot of great little wrestling scenes and such, and so I got to see shows down here, and And I still love it. I don't watch WWE a lot. I don't have cable and I don't have the network, so I like follow them through like news bits or whatever. But speaking of WWE, a couple things with them. They've had their dealings with the coronavirus. They had to run WrestleMania in their NXT Performance Center in Orlando. It's a small facility, and they had to run all their matches there. Sans crowd, of course. So then we got those cinematic matches out of them with the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse match thing. So, but anyway, unfortunately, yesterday on April 16th, legendary WWE ring announcer Howard Finkel passed away at age 69. I'd heard he'd been sick for quite some time, and that was a real punch to the gut, for the industry along with everything else that's going on. But he's an awesome voice. As I was saying, I grew up watching early WWF on TV, and he did ring announcing for all the shows at Madison Square Garden. You'll watch classic footage, you'll see the microphone lower from the ceiling with the MSG logo, and he'll grab the microphone and scheduled for one fall, and had that really great booming voice that was just perfect. With the tone, it's just I think he was hired in 1977, so he'd been there for a long time. He had announced for so many amazing matches, so many shows. I mean, he was the announcer for for so many WrestleManias. You think WrestleMania, you think his voice. I mean, he coined the name for the event too, so he's very, in many ways, synonymous with that event, along with like Hulk Hogan. You think WrestleMania, you'll think Hulk Hogan, you'll think Steve Austin, you'll think The Rock, and then you can think Howard Finkel could definitely be in that discussion. And that's definitely a voice of my childhood, a figure of my childhood and adolescence growing up watching wrestling and seeing him in the ring and hearing his voice. And that was sad to see. It's a bummer. I said, he's definitely one of the greats. And also, I think happened the day before on Wednesday, there was a mass layoff and furlough from WWE. It's probably like trying to think the last time I saw a release list like this, but especially with the CV affecting industries and such. WWE, they're already, they've gone into their cost-cutting measures as well, and I wanted to do this sooner, but the list kept growing and growing, so I just thought, well, I just have to wait for this. But as this was the current list of releases and furloughs from WWE, if I'm missing anybody, fellow wrestling fans, fill in the comments, if anyone I missed. But this was the list I'd seen that's most recent here. The releases include Kurt Angle, Rusev, Heath Slater, Eric Young, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, Kurt Hawkins, Leo Rush, EC3, Drake Maverick, which is interesting because he had just said that he was going to step down as 205 GM because he wanted to get back into wrestling, which now he can wherever he can end up. Let's see here. Also, Sarah Logan, Eric Rowan, Primo, Epico, Mike and Maria Canales, Zack Ryder. Wow, WWE lifer, you figured right there. Same with Slater. Noe Jose, Deanna Purrazzo. She's awesome. I dig her. And I was really excited when I saw that she was being signed with NXT, but Didn't seem like a lot was going on there. So let's see here. Alexander Jaksic and MJ Jenkins. That was the list of wrestlers who were released. That's a hell of a list. Like, Jesus Christ. And then producers. I mentioned Angle. Along with him is Billy Kidman, Mike Rotunda, Dave Finlay, Pat Buck, Sean Devari, Scott Armstrong, Sarah Stock, Shane Helms, and Lance Armstrong. It says here they've either been furloughed by or departed WWE as a part of today's cutbacks. Also, this guy had been with the company a long time too, like over 30 years. Mike Chioda, referee, he's gone, and also announcer Aiden English. So, yeah, those are the releases and furloughs from WWE, and they've already had, Vince has already had it with his XFL completely going under, and there's a fan or two out there that's hoping that somebody's gonna buy that league or the rights to, or the logo and tape library. I don't know. As far as I know, that league is just, it's dead in the water, just swimming with the fishes. Sucks. I thought that league looked really fun, and the team whom I rooted for, the Houston Roughnecks, were undefeated, so that was really fun too. But anyway, back to those releases. That's, like I said, that's a really, really large list. That's a huge list of people. Sucks to see. It's there's a lot of debate about it. There's WWE apologists coming out defending it, saying, well, everybody is suffering. Everybody everyone's going through this. This is not anything new. But still, it sucks to see. Especially some of those names too. You're just like, whoa. And it's at a time when they just can't jump ship to AEW or NWA or Ring of Honor or MLW or whomever else, Japan. All those other leagues shut down, with the rest of the sports leagues around the world. WWE is the only one that's really, they're on their own ship steering through, the unknown of CV, and still gonna run business and still do live shows and tapings. So we'll see. I think I was watching Wrestling with Regret, Brian Zane's YouTube show, and he had mentioned that I think the savings would be $4 million from these cuts. And I guess some people can say, well, that's $4 million that the companies say, but they already had said that they'd be fine, and they had, a cash reserve or whatever of $500 million at least and such, and they still have, plenty of assets and what have you. So, maybe that, unfortunately, like post WrestleMania cuts are common, but this one was just like, wow. When I saw the names coming up, I was like, damn. And then when I saw the list was increasing, I just really feel for those folks, and I hope everybody can find their way back to WWE or to one of the promotions once things get going, whenever that is. Who knows? Projections are for this summer. Who knows? But who knows? Not many people are going to be comfortable gathering right away in the tight space with plenty of other people. You at least have 25% or less of the population or poll or whatever, whomever, or asked about it, that they would go back. They and for gathering, to gather at a sporting event, whatever kind of event. So but we'll see. But yeah, it's really rough. Really little, really some rough news there. So, but as I said, hopefully over time, they'll find their way back to the company or to some other promotion or whatever else. Good luck to everybody on that list. And I think I'm going to wrap this up for now. Those are the things I wanted to talk about. And, I went on a bit about my pro wrestling fandom because I want to explain why I discuss, I was going to discuss this pro wrestling news because I still follow that whole deal. And I think I explained some of that a little bit in my first episode or whatever. So I explained about doing a pro wrestling podcast. That was the first podcast I did with my friends. So anyway, thanks for listening. This is Art Shimko with the ArtCast, and appreciate you listening. I'm on Podbean, and hopefully you can find this podcast on other platforms. I'm going to work on getting this on other directories and such. So I think I got it on TuneIn maybe, and I'm trying to get it on Apple as well. So again, thank you. This is Art Shimko from Austin, Texas, and tune in again. I appreciate y'all. Love you. Have a great day.